Okay, everyone, we're starting a bit early this time instead of Libertarian Standard Time. We've been we've been starting early, which is a good thing. And I hope that some of the people that joined us yesterday will come today. And I have as a guest with me Judge Jim Gray. And if you type in comments on my secretary page, it will show up here and we can see your questions. If you type in comments anywhere, this was shared on Facebook. Unfortunately, that doesn't feed right into StreamYard. So if you want to ask questions, just track back to the original post and it will show up here. Now, I wanted to start off with like a little recollection. I think you were the first. You probably won't remember this because you meet a million people. The first like big name libertarian I met, it was the Colorado convention in 2015. I was a brand new libertarian and you were speaking then. C. Michael Pickens was there. Nick Sarwark was there. And so that was March 2015. I think I joined the party in September. So it was brand new. My husband was there. He wasn't a libertarian yet. Okay. At that convention, Nick convinced us to oppose the death penalty. So it was a memorable experience. So good. I always have fond memories of meeting you, and you are the perfect gentleman. I know we agree on some things, just like I'm a radical and you're much more moderate, but you know, there's all kinds of libertarians out there. I don't believe in the circular firing squad.
You know, Karen, we're libertarians. I believe in competition. I believe that we should be able to discuss anything. We shouldn't yell at each other. I don't have all the answers. If I find someone that has all the answers, I run as fast as I can in the other direction. You know, but we can compare notes. I've been making some calls today and was talking with people that were supporting a different candidate, and we just had an open discussion, and I got educated as to various pros and cons. I think it's really important. And you know, our country has just gotten away from that. We're polarized. We've seen it with the R's and D's that, oh, if the Republicans really push for such and such, and then all of a sudden you get a new administration and the Democrats now take that over, the Republicans will be against it. I mean, that's just not who we are. We should be able to discuss things.
It's madness. It's absolute madness.
It's just not the way our country should be. And by the way, if I played a small part in bringing you into the Libertarian Party, that makes me proud, because you are a stalwart.
Definitely.
I told you, I'm gonna tattle, because I told you this before we went on the air, but you do an awful lot of things for us all that are unknown or maybe underappreciated on behalf of us all, Karen Ann. You know, thank you. Just flat out, thank you.
And that really warms my heart, because you know how it gets. That sometimes, you know, I told this to Phil yesterday. I didn't become a libertarian by talking to libertarians. I'm one of the few that all I did was read the platform, and I switched my party registration on the spot. I didn't meet another libertarian for 3 months probably, and I'm glad, because I think if I met some right away, I might have ran away. I had studying on my own period.
Now, come on here. We have some wonderful people. When I was running as a VP candidate with Gary Johnson in 2012, I would go into airports, whatever, and people would pick me up. I called them my mother hens, and they would drive me around for days on their own expense, their own gasoline. They put themselves up in the motels. They were wonderful people and caring people and intelligent people. There just aren't enough of them. But and that was at the same time, running and being your standard bearer for vice president was the most exhilarating experience and the most frustrating experience of my life, because I truly believe that Gary Johnson and I were the best candidates, and we just couldn't get the traction. We just couldn't get over that wasted vote syndrome, etc. If you'd like to talk about it, I have a plan on being able to win the presidency this year, and I think it was viable. And I'll end by saying that I think we have a good solid 3.7% chance of it working, but it will move us forward. It will help us progress. It will make us bigger. It will make us more impactful. We will grow the party and we'll help the down ballot candidates. So Gray Sharp, I think, is a unifying party, a unifying campaign. We're going to unify the LP, I believe, and then I think we're going to help unify the country. The time is right for that. People are craving what Gray Sharp and libertarians would do. They just don't realize it. We have many constituents all around the country. They just don't realize it. You know, let me tell you, I'm going to brag to you now, right now, because on April 21st, I became a granddaddy. And for the first time, little Hudson, and April 26th, I remember the date, I held him for the first time. And I looked down at this little miracle boy. And I thought to me, you know, I kind of welled up with tears. What a creation. What a wonderful thing. The second thought, Karen Ann, Hudson, you're $76,000 in debt. Pay up. You know, I mean, that budget deficit is a killer. Only libertarians talk about that. The others kick the can down the road, and you know the present administration said, "Oh, we're going to solve the deficit problem." And boy, he's contributing to it like unlike anybody else. It's only the libertarians that speak up for young people, that speak up for those that are getting bad schooling. I mean, if you don't get a good quality school education, you'll probably, the odds are extremely high, you'll never live up to your potential. So the people who are being failed by the school systems are our constituents. They don't know it. The healthcare, people that are elderly, people that are sick, we will help them. We will bring down the costs of healthcare, improve competition, all of this sort of stuff. Veterans, you want to know the biggest breach of contract I can think of is the way the United States government treats the veterans once they come back. You know, if you've lost a leg, you're going to get pretty good treatment because it's visible. But if you have, they used to call it shell shock or PTSD, you're pretty well shoved under the rug. Karen Ann, you know as well as we all do, probably 20% of the veterans in our, 20% of the homeless people in our country are veterans. There's got to be a connection. We're their constituents. The people that are sent off to war, you know, our battle people, and I was in the Navy, Larry Sharp was in the Marine Corps, and what they do when they're ordered to go into combat, the answer is yes, sir. Okay, they have an absolute right, an absolute categoric right to know that they're being sent into harm's way to protect our national interest, to protect our national security. And that means there has to be a declaration of war. There's no way around it.
Right.
Judge Jim Gray as president, Judge Jim Gray as president will push presidential power back to Congress, back to the states, and you know where else? Back to the people. People will relish it if we get this word out, and Gray Sharp is going to do just that.
And I watched the Kentucky debate, and I wanted to let you know something that this isn't about. There's something that gets on my nerves and not about you, so don't worry. I despise negative campaigning. And I have to tell you, you were a perfect gentleman in the face of what I thought were some very unfair attacks. So thank you for that. And I wish we would not do that. The first campaign I was ever very familiar with, obviously, was Gary Johnson. And I really wished I was a libertarian in the time of 2012. And I have a lot of disagreements with Gary on some policy, and people wonder why, like, I'm so wild about Gary. And it's because, to me, policy second. What's more important to me is that the candidate is a good person. And I don't think good people negative campaign. And it takes some grace to be able to handle that under fire, and you certainly did.
Well, Karen Ann, I was a trial court judge for 25 years, and we learned immediately that the only person that cannot lose her temper in trial in court is the judge. And so, you know, you just listen. Sometimes when I'm doing mediations, trying to help people resolve their cases voluntarily, I put myself in what's called the O zone. So, what do you mean? Well, my daughter had some problems growing up, doesn't everybody? And so I was talking with the child counselor, and he said, Mr. Gray, what you need to do is put yourself in the O zone when you're talking with your daughter. I said, what do you mean? Oh, responsive, but it's non-committal. And so I do that as well, and on the bench when I'm dealing with people, trying to resolve their cases, and also pretty much, you probably saw it in the Kentucky debate that you know, okay, you can do this if you want to. I'm just not going to go there. That's just not who I am. But thank you for that.
I really wish we'd commit to that as a party, just in general, because I think it's up to us to change the level of discourse in the country.
You mean to be adults? Is that, you're not saying that, are you?
I'm saying that, but also to be kind, because even children can be kind.
We've had some people say that libertarian is an act of love, and I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people, and I say that, and then people start listening. But libertarian really is. We've been done a disservice, or we've done ourselves a disservice for decades. You probably agree with this as well. We've allowed other people to label us. And so if you say the word libertarian to 100 people, probably 85 of them are going to say, use the Ian Rand phrase, greed is good. Well, it was fine for selling her novel, but basically what she meant is you act in your own economic self-interest, so does everybody else, and good things happen. I mean, that's, so you're acting greedy, you're acting in your own economic self-interest. But, you know, we're all on drugs or free drugs. No, I've never used marijuana. I've never used any illicit substances. Or you're into survival of the fittest, or no government at all, or, you know, the answer is no. So I've been trying to, what I call, mainstream the word libertarian, because libertarians are the only mainstream party in the United States today. You know, we are financially responsible. Hey, what a concept. At all levels of society, including government, by the way. We're live and let live. We are, you know, in effect, don't tread on me. Well, come on, don't tread on anybody. Oh yeah, that's where I am too. That most people are that way if you explain it to them. And we're going to directly change the culture in the United States of America so that they make libertarianism acceptable and accessible, so that people understand who we are. That's all we need to do. By the way, having a striptease on national television at our national convention was terribly harmful. Just terribly harmful. And I was there. I still hold myself a little bit responsible. I should have taken off my jacket, gone up to them, and just escorted him off the stage. I don't know how libertarian that would be, but I should have done that, gathering other people with me. So I kind of regret that.
It would have been perfectly libertarian. Let me tell you what okay, I said, when I saw it, this is what I said. This is why we need a hook and a gong at every convention. And we do that now in Colorado as a tradition. We rent a gong. But yeah, no, I know that.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think then who's going to have the gong? So if you don't say something I like, I'm sorry, Carrie Ann, you're gonged out of here. I only want people that agree with me. That's a potential problem too.
You cut out a tiny bit. Can you repeat a little bit of that?
Sure. You know, be careful what you ask for. Are we okay?
It's still cutting out a little.
Okay. Maybe it's my fuzzy
now
thing.
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, be careful what you ask for. That, in fact, if you have somebody with a gong, who's going to be in charge of the gong? You know, oh, I don't like what you said. I don't agree with it, so I'm going to gong you out. Nah, I don't think that's such a good idea. So that's
it was more of a score, like if we held up our cards.
Okay. I do know enough not to cross you. That much I can tell.
Oh boy, I'm not that scary. All right. And let me tell you, in the messaging department, what I really love is what Larry does, where he tries to find common ground rather than arguing about don't steal from me or whatever. He go, look, we all want X. We all want better education. We all want better schools, and to come at it that way from a common ground. And I think that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
Larry Sharpe is just a wonderful man. Bright, intelligent, insightful, dedicated. I mean, he's all of those things. You know, he joined the Marine Corps at the age of 17. Interesting thing. But, you know, I went to his website, thesharpeway.com, and watched the Larry Sharpe story. And I kind of got teary-eyed with the story he tells and who he is and what he's overcome and the rest. When he told me he would be my running mate, and that did me in. I had to run because we'd be a great team. Larry Sharpe, I really admire him.
And we do have some questions, but I want to run something by you because I think there was something that I had done on one of my podcasts, and to me it was something that seemed obvious, but then people said to me, wow, I never thought about it that way. And I submitted this postulate to people. I said, when people ask the question, but who will build the roads? You know, the typical question, that they're really not asking about the roads. It's signal. What they're really asking, if you follow the train of thought, they're not asking who will build the roads. What they're asking is questions like, who will feed the poor? That's really what they're asking. Nobody has a doubt that roads will get built, but the problem is we all need them. what's going to cause things to happen that we all don't need, that is just helping other people for the sake of helping other people. And when libertarians scoff at it and go, the same people that are building it now, that is so disrespectful, because it's not getting to what they are really asking. They might not even know what they're really asking, but they're basically asking what's going to happen to the least of us.
Well, and that's right. As a practical matter, first of all, I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people, and I'll explain my philosophy, which I fully expect is yours. If I were bleeding on the street right here, you would have no legal obligation to help me whatsoever, unless you caused my injuries. That would be different. But we will, because we want to, because we're compassionate people. So just because someone is alive does not mean I owe them anything. They're not entitled. That's an awful word. It's an awful feeling. But maybe they'll even be appreciative. But I would, if I were king, or if I were president, try to set, there's a difference, by the way, but I would try to set up in which institutionally we'd be able to take care of our homeless, and have some form of stipend, some form of money coming to them, doing away with all other welfare. I've explained this before. It's Milton Friedman, so I'm on solid ground. But if they would have automatically money in their ATM account, for example, then the private sector would quickly come up with some form of inexpensive room and board for them that would cost maybe all but $100 of whatever that stipend would be, which would let them have some money for buying personal items. And then they would have an incentive to better themselves, which is totally lacking today. My daughter, I told you, and she's given me permission to talk about this. So, she's bipolar, and she'll probably never hold a job. And so I tried to get her a job, and she was volunteering for a wonderful organization. Actually, let's say it's Veterans Legal Institute, which does wonderful work for veterans. And so I told them that if you give my daughter a job and pay her $12 an hour, I will pay you $15 an hour. And we quickly found out that if she works more than 10 hours a week, she will lose more money in her Social Security and other benefits than she'll gain by working. That's foolish, but that's mostly the system, mostly the welfare. So I care about people. I want them to have an incentive to earn the extra dollar. I want to get the IRS as much out of our lives as we can. Let's say 80% out of our lives, which would be a good thing, and set up an institutional program. What we have now with this, and I don't know if it should be a polarizing or controversial. It shouldn't be. I think it's a blight on who we are to have the homeless situation, particularly with women. Okay, if that's sexist, so be it. It bothers me even more to have a woman be homeless than a man. But if we were to have that institutional response, then people would have an incentive to better themselves. Right now, we have politicians, all of a sudden they feel greedy, or there's political push on them. So they'll throw a whole bunch of money at one program. Okay, we'll put up the homeless in a motel for 2 months. And then, of course, we go on and sail off and do other good deeds. And then nothing gets better because they get kicked out after 2 months. And no, we need an institutional response that would allow the private sector to take over, just like with healthcare. We need competition back in healthcare. We need competition back in education. That's what we libertarians would do. And the thing I would say, you mentioned that name calling or whatever in the campaign. The real difference that I have between my candidacy and most of the other candidates is that we agree with the same principles. We agree with the same actions. We believe the same values. I just want to move us forward. And if they say, you want it now, I want to do away with public schools immediately, or the Pentagon, or whatever they're going to say. That's an all or nothing approach. And Karen Ann, when people take an all or nothing approach, guess what they get? They get nothing. At least 5 years from now, we'll be in better shape by moving forward toward more charter schools and more homeschooling and more support. And then you show people. I was in the Peace Corps, like I told you, and I learned one lifelong lesson in the Peace Corps training, which was people will not change their attitudes, change their actions, unless they have what we call a felt need. That is, it has to feel like it's coming from within. Then, that's a good idea. Yeah, I want that too. So you show them how this will help them. So if you say, I'm going to abolish all public schools, or I'm going to abolish Obamacare, that's a better example. 2/3 of the people in the country immediately will think, you don't care about me. I mean, I would abolish Obamacare, of course, but what you do is you say, no, we do care about you. We're going to provide vouchers, maybe on a sliding scale, which you can use to buy private health insurance. You can use as co-pays depending on your financial ability, and then get all this other bureaucracy out of it so competition will come down. Karen Ann, Show me any time in which the government has intruded into the marketplace. What has happened? Always. The prices go up and the quality of service and product comes down. That's what's happened in healthcare. Get the government out. So
And
yes,
choices are limited.
well, sure, and allow the purchaser to decide where her money is going to be spent. The educational system today is really backwards because it's the provider that decides what the purchaser will buy. That doesn't work. That provides lots of health and lots of good things for the providers, but no, you put education, you have your education your way. You allow the purchaser to decide where her government money is going to be spent for the education of their children, and they will demand excellence. Now, is that immediately getting everything? No, but boy, I tell you, 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to move that football down the field. I want to win the game. That's the way we do it. So that's the difference between me and the other candidates.
We have a question here from Tyler, and I'm going to stick it up on the screen because you had talked about the homeless, so I thought this was pertinent. He had asked if you're against civil asset forfeiture, why do you support funneling the money to education or feeding the homeless rather than ending the practice altogether?
I assume that you mean ending the practice of civil asset forfeiture? That's what I'm reading. I am violently opposed to civil asset forfeiture. I have written about it. I have excoriated it on the media. It's simply wrong. I would allow asset forfeiture. For example, if you're arrested for a drug offense, right now, you can be stopped by the police in most places, and they can say, "Oh, open your wallet." You're kind of down. "Oh, you have $120. That must have been taken in a drug deal," and they take the $120. Now it's up to you in many states to file an action, to go to court to prove that in fact it wasn't accomplished by selling an illegal means. The answer is no, unless if you are arrested and convicted for some form of, say, drug offense, then to the same jury, they say, okay, he had this gold jewelry on. Do you find that this gold jewelry is purchased with drug money? If the jury says yes, okay, then the government can keep it. But otherwise, the answer is no. It is a license to steal, and it's been used to steal from people routinely. Most of the people that lose assets are never convicted of anything. And that's flat out wrong, Tyler. I have taken an active position against that. Now, with regard to schooling, yes, I believe that government money should be spent to educate our children. I do. Otherwise, there's some people that they fall by the wayside. That is not in our social best interest. It's not in our human best interest. But it's totally separate and apart from the asset forfeiture issue.
I have a question for you. I've heard some things, and I don't know where people are getting this from, because sometimes there's like a game of whispers. Somebody says something, and all of a sudden it becomes true. I've heard people object, and they go, "Oh, Judge Jim Gray, he's all about he's a drug warrior," and I've never seen that from you. I'm like, that's like opposite. That's like saying that I don't have loud hair. I don't get it. So I was wondering if you had if you could explicate what's your position on the drug war and related issues.
Well, my position there, I was a former drug warrior, Karen Ann, as you probably know. And I was Navy JAG attorney. I wrote out charge sheets against my fellow shipmates for lots of things at the Naval Air Station in Guam. And then I was a criminal defense attorney on the side. And then I was a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles and prosecuted drug cases and other things. But then I'd been on the bench for only 9 years. Back in 1992, 28 years ago, I held a press conference telling the world, anyone who would listen, that our nation's policy of drug prohibition is a failure. It has simply not worked us well. It is harming people. We're churning low-level drug offenders through the system for no good purpose, frequently ruining their lives, spending lots and lots of resources that should be used to prosecute robbery, rape, and murder, for example. And we're getting involved in asset forfeiture and the rest. So I put my public life in jeopardy. And I said at the time, and I still say, that there's some things that are more important than job security. So I put it on the line. Since then, I've been on media all over the place, internationally. O'Reilly factor twice. Can't say he agreed with me, but at least he invited me back. But no, I put what I call libertarian courage back then in 1992 to speak out against that, and I still do. Other things as well. I don't talk about candidates, so I'm not going to talk about the current president. He does not speak for me. I agree with some of the things he's done. I think Betsy DeVos has been ineffective at head of the Secretary of the Education Department. I would wean away from the Education Department by shining a light on all federal agencies. I believe that we should have what I call sunset provisions. So every 5 years, each federal agency comes to Congress by itself and says, okay, this is what we've done for the last 5 years. These were our goals. These are the ones we accomplished. That's how much we spent. And now these are our goals for the next 5 years. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we're proposing for our budget. And then we can look at it together. It should be on C-SPAN. All of us look at that and say, well, wait a minute. I mean, that's duplicated. This stuff began in the New Deal. Now, maybe you wanted it back then, maybe you don't. But now still, no, we'll cut that back. This is duplicated. We'll cut that back. So yeah, that's a good goal. We'll do that one. We'll cut your budget by about 60% and go off and just do these selected things. Milton Friedman, a hero of mine, and I hope of yours, said something that would be a positive revolution in our country if we would follow it. Namely, we should judge our programs by the results, not their good intentions. If we could only just do that, that would take care of the minimum wage immediately, because it's good intentions. Okay, I'll grant you that. It's a disaster for most people. It runs them out of business, out of work. Go to McDonald's. You've heard of that place, I assume. It used to be that we used to order our Big Macs from a person, from a cashier. Now, of course, you order them from a computer. Why? Because the wages simply put them out of business. It is much more socially beneficial to have 100 people working, for example, at $10 an hour than 65 people working at $15 an hour. I mean, that's not a hard choice. The other way you describe it is, how can people get up the economic ladder if they can't get on the first rung? I mean, I'm sorry, maybe this is too blunt, but some people are not now worth $15 an hour. So if they will never get that job. It's just rent control. It's the same thing. You can go through it all over the place. So we will shine a light on these public agencies and show, we will try to abolish some. There's no provision in the federal government today to do away with a federal agency except their budget. So if all of a sudden Congress says, okay, we're not going to send a budget for the Department of Commerce. Let's talk about the Bureau of Indian Affairs. One of our industrialists said, and everybody should listen to this, anyone that feels they can thrive by relying on the government should talk to the American Indian. I mean, that's really all you have to say. But look what it's done for them. And by the way, the Irish, when they came over here, they had the stereotype of all being drunks and the rest. We should have had a Bureau of Irish Affairs, don't you think? I mean, it's comical. The Irish have done very well, thank you very much. But so I would do away with, if I could, just by exposing this. The Indians, or the Native Americans, call it bossing Indians around, the BIA. That should be abolished. It just has been harmful. And other federal agencies as well. But if you run for office saying, I'm going to abolish the Department of Education, people are going to say, well, that's scary. You don't believe in educating my children? You need to explain to them. The felt need comes back in. So those are all things. Life is complicated. I'm sorry to be so blunt. You heard it here first, but life is complicated.
I actually think, just from, a member of the peanut gallery, for my opinion, that if you were to become the nominee.
Stop. Do not think that way about yourself. You're an intelligent lady. You cannot do that in my presence. Now, go ahead, but not with that preface.
I actually think leading a lot with your sunset provision thing is a winner.
It is.
That people don't hear things like that. And I think that would grab a lot of attention.
It's an audit. Just conduct an audit on the federal government, on the Pentagon, lots of things, and people will understand that. I ran for U.S. Senate in 2004 as a libertarian, and I would open with that. And, usually I was speaking, of course, to people who are not libertarians, which is kind of the idea, and they'd be nodding their head. Yeah, just your reaction as well. Sure, I do that at home. I mean, why shouldn't we do that in other public?
Yeah, businesses do that. And what's great about it is everyone has an agency they hate. So they don't feel like you're attacking the ones they love. They're like, yeah, we'll get rid of all those ones that I hate.
You want to do yourself an act that will be depressing? Please say no. But if you were to try to depress yourself, go Google the words, the Plum book. Plum, like the fruit.
Ooh.
It is a federal publication. It's a book. It's about 212 pages long, single-spaced, listing all of the appointments that a president makes, and half of which are confirmed by Congress in the federal government, which, by the way, the federal government is the largest company in the world. But then if you want to really get depressed, after seeing those lists of names, almost all of them are paid somewhere between $168,000 and $198,000 a year. I mean, you imagine why government is so expensive? It's just outrageous. And that's plus benefits and the rest. Do we really need these people? Well, if we do, that's fine. But I believe that good people would come and work for the federal government for 30% less as well. But we just shouldn't have that many. Just simply shouldn't have that many. Conduct an audit. One more that works. Ron Paul, you've heard of him, I believe. I'm using
somewhat. I think so.
Round kicked it. But using his statistics, he said several years ago, we have something in the order, the United States has something like 400 military reservations in other countries around the world. 400. Now, times have changed. Maybe we're not in the same position now as we were at the end of the Second World War. We didn't have nuclear carriers back then, all this sort of stuff. Let's conduct an audit. Talk to the military, not politics, just talk to the military. If we need those installations for our security and our national defense, fine, reinforce them as far as I care. But I'll bet you it would take us about an hour and a half to go through those with any form of inquiry, and we could probably close 300 of them without half trying. Then we'll start looking and more focus on the remainings. But just that doesn't mean I'm going to bring all the troops home, because that's silly. That we have some national interest in free trade, for example, in the freedom of the seas. So we should do our part to help that. South China Sea is at issue. I think that we have a national interest in keeping the freedom of the seas. The Dardanelles through Turkey to go into the Black Sea, that is in our national interest. So we might need some reservations across, but let's look at it. Let's just conduct an audit. Conduct an audit of the Fed. Maybe you've heard that before. People don't understand what the Fed does. So do away with the Fed. Oh, that sounds pretty radical, even though I would. But let's move toward it. Let's start shrinking it and exposing what they do, educating people on what they do. And oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's right. I feel that should happen too. That's where we've gone astray.
I'm going to read some comments here, but what I do want to make sure we do cover that we kind of got away from the beginning is your path to victory that you had mentioned, because I am very interested in that. But let me read a few of these that have come up here. Rob Lathan had said, shout out to Judge Gray from a fellow graduate from the University of Southern California. And he asked if you had any awareness of interaction with John Hospers when he chaired the University School of Philosophy beginning in 1968.
Actually not. I went to law school there, and I hate to bring things down, but I was at UCLA undergraduate and then USC law school. So no, I did not have any involvement with the Department of Philosophy. I've certainly heard of the doctor, and he seems to be highly regarded, but the answer, I'm sorry to say, is no.
I admire John Hosper so much. There are a couple more questions, but I want to put them aside because not aside permanently. If we have time, I'll get to them. But I want to hear about the idea that you had said with the percentages about the path to victory.
Sure. There's no way, Karen Ann, that we libertarians, Gray Sharp, anyone else, is going to be able to compete with the tens of millions of dollars, for example, that the Republicans or Democrats are going to spend in California. And we just can't compete there, and we won't get much traction there. Or in Texas, Trump's going to win Texas. New York, Biden's going to win New York. So what we're going to do is to concentrate on maybe 5 small independent states. And we'll look at them. We'll spend our time there. Larry Sharp has already agreed that he and I are going to spend a great deal of time in them. We'll go to their town hall meetings once they're open. We're going to go to their Kiwanis clubs, their grocery stores. We'll look them in the eye, the voters, and say, your vote will make history. That if we can win 2 or 3 small states by getting 38%, 40% of the vote, then we will probably get enough electoral college votes that neither Biden nor Trump will be able to get a majority, which will then throw it to Congress. And then you know full well that no Democrat in Congress is going to vote for Trump, and no Republican in Congress is going to vote for Biden, but they're restricted by the Constitution to the top 3 finishers. We will be the compromise candidate. We will, by the way, Gray Sharp will bring unity to the Libertarian Party, and then eventually we'll bring unity to America. But we will then be the compromise candidate, and we will be elected. And as I say, I think that's a good solid 3.7% chance of working. But Imagine if we only win one state. I mean, that would be a positive revolution for the Libertarian Party. Forevermore, we're going to see all these maps of the country, and they're going to be the blue states that went Republican and or Democrat, and the red states that went Republican. Now, what's that gold state up there? What? I mean, this is Utah or Washington or New Hampshire or you know, wherever.
Colorado.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I wherever it would be, we'll be happy to have 5 or 6. But also, as an additional thing, we said at the beginning we'll focus there, because as soon as we start polling, you know, 20%, 25% in North Dakota, it's going to get the attention of the rest of the country. What's going on in North Dakota? Who are these Democrats? No, who are those Libertarians? Gray Sharp? Well, let's report on them, and it will start a coattail movement. So I'm just excited by that prospect, and I would hope whomever is the nominee, which I think the odds are good that it will be Gray Sharp, but whoever it is, I would recommend that they pursue that approach. It's exciting.
I think it's a winner. And one reason I think it's a winner, especially in the smaller states, is they still have a very community-minded attitude. And that old-time down-home, pressing palms, kissing babies, political activism resonates. And they have the kind of we're small and scrappy home state pride. And it would mean something to them to be a state that did something different.
They will make history in the good sense. And,
right.
You know, Tip O'Neill, who always used to be able at least to have a drink with Ronald Reagan, but Tip O'Neill had it right. He said, politics is personal, and so is everything else. We will go, we will listen. I mean, that sort of thing too, but people will listen to our message. And I got, in the campaign in 2012, I got really good, solid local coverage. Wherever I go, we got good local, get on the radio and you'd get attention and the rest, but not national. But this will generate good local coverage, Alaska, wherever, and they're independent. The smaller states really are independent. They're not so polarized. They're not so, my goodness, tribal.
And they feel overlooked. So they've got something to prove. Let me tell you, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, those states would love to be the center of attention, be like, yeah, California, you think you're badass? We're badass.
That's right. And by the way, if you get west of the Mississippi, it's an outrage. Do you know that the federal government owns more than 80% of the land in Nevada? I mean, really? I would strongly have the federal government, everything ran by the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. I'm not talking national parks. I'm not talking military reservations. I'm not even talking national forests, but anything run by the BLM, those lands should go back to the states. It's just an atrocity as to how you can explain why it happened, because, you know, they were territories at the beginning and stuff. It's simply wrong. I would encourage the states, because it's their land, I would encourage them to block it off 1/10 every year and auction off 1/10 of those lands to the private sector. Ask the question, talk about libertarian, who takes better care of a house, an owner or a renter? Mm-hmm. Not hard to, who takes better care of grazing land, an owner or the lessee? I mean, it's not hard to figure out. If you own the property, and you can put restrictions, no strip mining if that's what you want to do for environmental sake, but that's what will happen in a libertarian administration. We will send land power back to the states and to the cities and to Congress and to people, as well as their land. Federal government has no business, in my opinion, owning all of that land in Colorado or Wyoming or Montana or California. Just wrong. Maybe we get some votes.
Yeah, well, Colorado, you know, I was saying this with Phil Gray the other day, is I didn't realize these issues till I moved to Colorado. I'm originally from Florida, and that's just not a thing like in Florida. No. And so much land in Colorado is owned by the federal government. And again, if it was national forest, I wouldn't be quite so irritated about it. But what's happened now is the really extreme environmentalists in Florida have turned the national forest land into wilderness. And most people don't know the difference between wilderness designation and a national forest designation. And when it's wilderness, you might as well just say it belongs to the deer and the owls, because people can't use it in any meaningful way. It is absolutely ridiculous what's going on in Colorado.
It's just a balance. It's just a balance, and you should have on a local level. The federal government does not trust the people in Colorado to take care of their own land. I mean, such arrogance. Just let's call it what it is. It's just such arrogance, and the the Libertarian administration, Gray Sharp 2020, we will bring that to the people. I'm proud of it, and so much more.
Well, I like your strategy. I know you got a little bit of criticism from that at the Kentucky debate, but it's realistic.
That just goes with the territory. May I put in a plug for my book, Karen Ann?
Oh, yes, please, because I've just started going through it, because I am going to be doing a review once the nomination gets straightened out.
Understood. But for the last 5 years, I have written a blog, and it's called 2 Paragraphs for Liberty. May I say that again? 2 Paragraphs for Liberty. And so it talks about basically a comparison of what private foundations, private people would do on the one hand, and the government response on the other, and guess which comes out ahead. Anything from Doctors Without Borders, or the Red Cross as opposed to FEMA, all that sorts of things, as well as just liberty. And so I took the more substantive of them, something like 200 and so articles, and wrote it into a book. And now it's called 2 Paragraphs for Liberty, Solutions that are Practical, Effective, Responsible, Libertarian. Again, I bring in the word libertarian, and then it says Judge Jim Gray, Libertarian underneath it. But I'll put it just so people can.
Yep, I've got that.
And I'm proud of it. And the idea was that once I got back my expenses, I would donate the proceeds for the rest of time to the Libertarian Party. It may be that when I'm nominated, I may use the proceeds during the election campaign for our campaign, but one way or the other, it's going to go for a libertarian cause. And I'm just proud of it. And I've gotten some good endorsements. And by the way, I've also put on there the quote for the day, or the silliness for the day. One of them is, for example, it's the best play on words I think I've ever heard. What do you call, Karen Ann, a mix of an elephant and a rhinoceros? What do you call it when you mix an elephant and a rhinoceros? And the answer is Elefino. But at any rate.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
Like that. And of course, you get quotes from Thomas Jefferson where, I don't care if you worship one God, 20 gods, or no God, it doesn't pick my pocket and it doesn't break my leg, which is just the epitome of a libertarian. He was the prototype of a libertarian. So all of that, it's fun. I'm dedicated to the libertarian cause, and I'm proud of it.
And anyone who doubts that is just, okay, I'm going to use one. I sometimes get a bit colorful. I go, anyone who doubts that you're not dedicated to the Libertarian Party is just smoking crack. That's the only way I can put it. I mean, that's just.
I think I will refrain from saying that, but okay.
Yeah, I can say it. Now that you just. Some other questions came into my mind, because something that's some people don't agree with me on this, but I think it's very important that all candidates, not just the top of the ticket, but that they use the on their materials and in their campaign. And if you're the nominee, what's your view on that?
Oh, heavens sakes, yes. Oh, I always do that. No, be proud. The Libertarian Party is the only mainstream party in our country today. What's the difference between the Libertarians on the one hand and all other political parties? Libertarians do not want to profit by being involved with government. And that's about as straightforward as you can make it. I want to level the playing field for everybody. We're not going to give rebates to or bail out any companies. You make bad decisions, or life sometimes happens. Sometimes we have pandemics. I'm sorry. We're going to reduce. Anytime you have government involved in that sort of thing, it's arbitrary. It's arbitrary. We have this $2.2 trillion. Now, remember my poor little grandson, Hudson, that he's going to have to pay this back. But so the Department of the Treasury that has a slush fund, which is exactly what it's called, of $500 billion to give to different companies. Guess which ones are going to receive it? His cronies, the ones that are going to support the administration. I mean, it's our money. You go back to Alexis de Tocqueville, 1820, that sort of thing, Democracy in America, we all read it in school. And Tocqueville said, this democracy is a new experiment, and it's going to succeed until the elected officials figure out that they can use the taxpayers, the people's money, to buy their votes. That's where we are today. We are there. I'm using the taxpayer money to buy your votes. I'm such a good guy, so support me. Libertarians do not do that. They don't even think that. That's called basically for the people. We can shrink government down enormously by auditing, by showing what's going on. That's where it is.
Here's what I say as we're coming up. I want to get some of these more questions answered, and then give like the last 3, 4 to 5 minutes for you to plug why the delegates should pick you. I wanted to give you that last bit. But let's do like a little bit of a lightning round of some of these questions. Here's one that intrigued me because it's off the beaten path. Tyler asked, as president, would you violate the top secret laws and finally disclose our government's information in regards to extraterrestrial life?
Okay. The answer is no, I will not violate the laws, but yes, I will get the laws changed so that people can hear the truth. However it is, however it comes out.
Whatever it is.
That's right. That's right. Either it's all wet or there's something I don't know. I will not violate the laws, but I will cause them to be changed. Do my best. Yes.
And Tyler always has great questions. Last night he did too. He also asked, in your view, does the federal government have the power to prosecute crimes other than treason, or should that power be left to the states?
You're breaking up a little bit. Prosecute other than treason?
Yeah. Does the federal government have the authority to prosecute any other crimes other than treason? And should all those other crimes be left to the states? Okay.
The answer is yes. Counterfeiting, I think, is a federal offense. I would, for example, try to repeal the Controlled Substances Act. I would take marijuana immediately off the substance and allow each state to decide how to do it, and then try to repeal the Controlled Substances Act, allowing each state to decide how best to serve and protect its people. So if Indiana, for an example, decided that they were going to stay prohibiting heroin, whatever, and if somebody from Illinois smuggled heroin into Indiana in violation of its laws, I think putting things over the state border is a federal offense. So yes, I would do that. We have federal banks. I think the locals could probably handle bank robberies, but there are some things, some national frauds. The people are really organized and they use the mails, they use the wire services. It's really complicated. Yes, there are some legitimate federal offenses, many too many. They should be cut back. But put it this way, the United States of America has 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. And it was Senator Jim Webb, who was a Democrat from Virginia, a U.S. Senator, said when faced with those statistics, either we're the most criminally oriented people in the world or we're doing something wrong. Which do you think it is? And of course, that answer is obvious. We over-incarcerate. We even if you're good for some offense, you're sent to prison for just ridiculous amounts of time. Enhancements, 3 strikes and you're out, all that sort of stuff. So we will audit those. We will focus a light on those. Karen Ann, I will take the position that we have tens and tens of thousands of people in our prison system today that shouldn't be there. And I'm a pretty conservative person. I'm in the responsibility business, prosecutor, judge, the rest of that. Shouldn't be there. Geriatrics that couldn't hurt you even if they wanted to throw their walkers at you. I mean, I would never let Charles Manson out of prison, or Sirhan, and that sort of thing. Most of them, so you sold a ton of marijuana, which is a lot of marijuana. 10 years is a long time. They're getting 30, 40, 50. I mean, it's silly. So we would go through and shine a light on all of those things. It's not going to make us less safe. In fact, it'll make us more safe because we'll be able to spend these resources on prosecuting robbery, rape, and murder. So things are connected, but I will shine a light on those things. Nobody's going to challenge my criminal justice credentials. I mean, nobody's going to be able to. So they have to listen to the message. That's what happened in 1992 when I held that press conference. They couldn't say, oh, he's out smoking dope. I've never used any illicit substance. Don't want to, won't. But they had to listen to the message. I have those credentials. There's no one in this presidential race that has my background and my credentials. They just don't, from any party. And I will bring that sort of approach. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm older enough. I very likely would not run for re-election. I'd have probably nominate Larry Sharpe. But one way or the other, I care about my country. I'm still in the Peace Corps. I still want to do what's best for our people.
Excuse me. Yeah, I swallowed and spit the wrong way. That's ridiculous.
I thought you choked up when you were hearing my talk.
There was a question that was asked yesterday that I like to ask everybody because this is always, it's libertarians, how do you think a candidate should handle when they disagree with the platform? Because nobody agrees with the platform 100%. I don't agree with the platform 100%, and I'm pretty hardcore.
you know, let's pick your battles. I think most of the things in the platform I agree with, and so do my fellow candidates. The disagreements that we have is how best to get there. Again, all or nothing, you get nothing. If you do it slowly, you approach it, then people will understand more. I think that's the biggest difference. You know, some of them are controversial, but basically, I'm in agreement within reason. It kind of depends how you read them, but you pick your battles elsewhere.
Do you think it's reasonable to say, like, you remember with Gary last term, the whole bake the cake controversy? Now, I'm not getting into whether his view was right or wrong. Do you think it would have been reasonable for libertarians to expect him to say, this is my view, and this is why I hold it? It's not necessarily the party's view. Because it seemed to me with that particular issue that a lot of the public was a bit deceived about what the party actually thought. And I'm usually very careful. I don't want someone to be misled. If they want to come to the party, I want them to be eyes wide open, to really know what they're getting into. And I tended to think it would, I don't tell any candidate you've got to follow the platform 100%, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say, please differentiate your views when you have something that's a little bit different.
Well, and that's fair. Look, I wrote something maybe 2 years ago called One Man's Libertarian White Paper. And at the beginning of that, I said, no one speaks for the Libertarian Party. Not me. These are just my views. But I said, what will the world look like in a libertarian approach? And who are the winners? Who are the losers? Well, the winners are the young and the elderly, and all that sort of thing that we were talking about. The losers are the bureaucrats and the people that gain by being involved in government, the cronyism, the teachers that can't teach, that sort of thing. It's on my website. If you want to know what Judge Jim Gray thinks about virtually anything, I have written more about the issues than any presidential candidate in history, I'll bet you, including James Madison. I wrote a weekly column in a local newspaper for 3 years. I've written my blog for 5 years, and it's out there. 4 books, 2 musicals, numbers of law review articles. One of them
musicals. That intrigues me.
Okay, I have just a couple of minutes. Let me do something I did at the Libertarian Convention in Mississippi and the Libertarian Convention in California. My second music, the first one was Americans All, and it's meant to mentor our students, and it's doing pretty well. The second one is called Convention, the Birth of America, and it talks about the Constitutional Convention. Ben Franklin is our moderator, and we have all the delegates there. And by the way, we hold them accountable as well. I have one song that's as good a song as I've ever heard, and that's called What About Me, where originally the delegates are all excited. Oh, freedom is what we live for. Brotherhood is what we live, and all that sort of stuff. And then you have a picture of a slave. Well, what about me? You know, you build your mansions on my back. About me. And you have a woman, probably Abigail Adams, who says, well, you know, cooking, cleaning, and sewing, why should I rejoice? I can't go to get own property. I can't go to school. And then you have a North Native American who says, you know, you are building, we allowed you onto this land, and now you leave us with only the crumbs. You know, you soil your destiny. What about me? And finally, a blacksmith that says, well, you know, you're the landed class. Well, how about helping me out here? You're the well-bred, well-fed, well-read, well-wed. Why you always live in secrecy? Well, I bleed, I need, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of this, then we come to a finale, and we tell how we have accomplished what we've accomplished in the last few years. And after the curtain goes down, then the curtain comes back up again, and we have an encore. And Ben Franklin comes out, and he motions George Washington out with him and says, George, you know, throughout this convention, didn't you think there was some eavesdropping? And George says, wow, drop your eaves. That's got to hurt. But no, but look at these. Manager, turn up the candle power up. Oh, there are people out there. Wow, look at, oh, they have better eyeglasses, don't they? Yeah, and better teeth. Well, but what year is it? Talks to someone in the first row. Oh, it's 2020. George, is there anything you would like to tell the people? There are descendants. Anything you'd like to say? Well, as a matter of fact, yes, says George. They say you like to call us founding fathers. Our portraits are still in your history books. To that we'd like to say we're deeply honored and glad to see the artist captured our good looks. But if you're for the fathers, you're our sons and daughters, with some greats and grands appended, that's for sure. And though we never met you, we knew you'd be coming along someday. So we wrote this Constitution to keep you safe and strong the American way. Keep it alive, see that it thrives, and pass it along again. But open your eyes, you've got to be wise, you've got to be strong, and then Teach your children well, maybe even tell them of your founding fathers, how your sons and daughters carried it through 100 or 2 perilous years to hand it to you. Now, George Washington to the people. But now you are the people. It's you. You are the we. It's yours, your Constitution, it belongs to you and me. Yes, you are the people. It's you are the we. It's yours, your Constitution, for this land of the free. Carry it forward, carry it on, protect and defend it in keeping it strong. And when there is weakness, amend it you must, but harbor no meekness, defending this trust. Now the whole cast out to the audience. For you are the people. It's you are the we. It's yours, your Constitution, for this land of the free. Curtain. It's ours.
I think that was the best argument for the delegates. You got 2 minutes. Give your best pitch, and then we'll sign on out.
Well, and thank you, Karen Ann. There's so many people behind the scenes and everything connected to it. I am who I am. You know, some of the biggest knife wounds I've received when I was running as a libertarian was from fellow libertarians. Maybe I didn't express it quite well enough, that sort of thing. But the heart is there. We're going to grab this thing together. Never in our history during my lifetime have we had a situation in which people were so polarized, crying out for a third voice, crying out for somebody responsible, not yelling, not swearing at each other, not trying to get vested interest and trying to profit. It's we libertarians that are what they want, they need, they will crave it if they understand who we are and what we would do. So join us, as I say, go to graysharp2020.com. You'll like what you see. And if you visit us, you join us, you support us, you help us move mountains, or even if you don't, we will do you proud. It's from the heart. Larry Sharp, Judge Jim Gray, the unity candidates for the LP, the unity candidates for the United States of America. We're there to serve you, and we're going to be successful. We will do you proud. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing this time. I really appreciate it, and good luck to us all.
Thank you. And listen, if you guys are the candidates, I will campaign my ass off for you. You have my word. So thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I know you're on to your next gig. So have an awesome night.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
All right.
Good luck.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.